Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. My name's Jasper and this is the brand new KGM Lights Camera Action. Let's start with styling at the front, where it's fair to say this is a vehicle that's got a lot of presence on the road. Whether that's with your signature daytime running lights in this little angled strip, or your central light bar with trigrams inspired by the South Korean flag, or this incredibly chunky looking front bumper, this car does look very good. I love the gloss black elements to the bumper. These surround your main headlights, this little grille with slats in it, and of course the sensor for your adaptive cruise control system. You've got a front camera down here, and then actually at the front you have no branding. When it comes to badging, this is quite a sleek and subtle car. What's not subtle though is the crease work in this bodywork. So you've got a very 3D sculpted bonnet with some large ridges in it. You've got some fake grab handles up here, and then this little ridged section at the base of the windscreen. In a way, it's quite off-road inspired, but when we have a look down the side, you'll see that that's not necessarily what this car's aiming for. Now, KGM tell me that this is a coupe SUV, and to an extent, you can kind of see that, because at the back end, your screen does dip away a little bit, so you've got a side profile which, I'm honest, is giving Range Rover. Especially when you look at the roofline and that rear screen, it does look quite familiar. Now, I do think this looks really good. I love the sculpting, the deep haunches around the wheel arches, these extra bits of plastic trim around them, and then this gloss black element that runs along the side of the vehicle. It's a very streamlined and quite premium design. You've got large door mirrors which are quite angular, and then these 20-inch diamond cut alloy wheels which look very premium and are the only alloy option available on this car. The thing I'm less sold on is this C-pillar, which is quite frankly massive. It's a very statement piece, but I think I'd prefer it if we had a little bit more window here. That would make it look even more like a Range Rover though. You've got gloss black roof rails and some highlighting elements of silver which contrast very nicely with this metallic paintwork. Underneath that silver strip, you've also got privacy glass in the quite long rear doors, and again, we come back to that sleekness in the design. It's a very modern, refreshing take from KGM. Back here, you'll see a lot of bold but very stylish elements. So you've got this gloss black element at the side of the rear screen, these incredibly sleek looking rear tail lights, and then this quite bold but gloss black plastic surrounded rear light cluster. Other than the center of the alloys, this is the only place on the exterior of the vehicle where you actually see the KGM script. Now, KGM, formerly SsangYong, have started to drop their badge, so it's a very subtle nod to the company and its heritage. Across the back of the vehicle, you've got the name, Action, spelled out in script in this lovely little section here. You've also got some angular elements that hang over the rear screen a little bit, and I love the sleek look that you get from this privacy glass. Down here at the bottom, you've got some diffuser type styling, which is all gloss black plastic. You've also got a reversing camera, and the Action comes with a boot that is electronic and has a foot sensor. So you don't actually have to press a button to open it. You can just wave your foot underneath the rear bumper, which is a first for a Korean manufacturer, and it works. Now, because it's quite a long vehicle, practicality is one area where the Action really comes into its own. And the first thing notable there is the boot capacity, because this has got 668 litres of boot space. And if you remove the false floor and the foam divider that sits underneath it, you get another 128 litres available to you. The space is fantastically boxy, and despite the slightly angled rear screen, you don't actually lose too much space within the boot. It's perfectly flat, there's basically no load lip, and I really appreciate a couple of the features back here. So I've got deep pockets on either side of the boot. I've got a fold down curry hook, which is very handy. I've got my false floor with storage underneath it. And then I've also got an electronic release for the boot back there, so you can open it from inside. There's also a lovely roll top parcel cover, and I'm pleased to report it's not just here where the car is practical. So let's check out the back seats. In the rear of the Actyon, it is incredibly spacious with a massive amount of knee room. Now this seat is in my driving position, but even if somebody very tall were sitting here, I would still have space for my knees. I've got loads of headroom. I could be at least 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall, and I'd still have headroom back here. And then also, look at this interior. How nice is this? I've got leather on the seats with contrast red and contrast red stitching. I've got perforated leather and flat leather. The materials back here are seriously impressive. I've got some lovely TPU on the door cards, again with contrast stitching, and I've got practical features like sunshades for the rear windows, 2-stage heated seating back here, a fold down armrest with a pair of cup holders in it, and then various different pockets on the backs of both of these front seats, and somewhere that you can clip a holder for a phone or tablet. I've got a charging socket down here with 2 USB Type-C ports in it, a little cubby, another little cubby, rear air vents, controls to move the front passenger seat out of the way on the side of it here, and reasonably large door pockets which will take a large bottle of water. So it's safe to say that the back seats here are very practical. And another thing that I really like is that you can adjust the angle of the backrest of these seats to allow you to recline a little bit more or sit more upright, depending on whether you'd like more space in the boot or not. So I can lean back even further and be more comfortable in this incredibly spacious and surprisingly luxurious interior. Let's see what it's like up front. It's more of the same, with the same lovely TPU material on the door cards with contrast red stitching. That extends all the way across the dashboard, although this is a rubberized material. And I've got a lovely faux wood effect layer in the dashboard here. Some highlighting silver trims and a very nice steering wheel with both flat and perforated sections of leather and more contrast red stitching on it. Both of the front seats are both heated and ventilated, so you've got all 4 seats heated, and if you're up front, you can cool yourself down in summer too. I really like the design and layout of the cabin. It feels very modern, very fresh in here. You've got some lovely ambient lighting LED strips across the dashboard and in the door cards. These can be configured to be a range of different colours. And then this centre console is a floating and very open affair. So down here, I've got space for putting some items. There's 2 USB Type-C ports down here, one for plugging in for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and a second for charging, a 12-volt socket over to the left of that, and then a large cubby area in the center console. I've got a crystal effect shift lever up here next to a pair of cup holders and a wireless Qi charger for my mobile phone. Practicality is great too, with a large central storage cubby down here, and the glove box is a reasonable size. What you have a distinct lack of in this cabin is physical buttons, and that's because all of your controls, including climate control and heated seats, are done through the central screen. You do, however, have a favourites button on your steering wheel, which can be configured as a quick shortcut to get you to the climate screen. So that does add some element of utility back into this experience. However, I would much prefer a row of physical buttons underneath this screen here. The screens are a great pair of 12.3-inch digital displays. I've got one for the driver's instrumentation cluster and a second for the infotainment screen in the centre. If I pop the car on, that will light up, and you can see that the system is relatively slick, but it's not one of the quickest on the market, so you do tap things and it takes a second to load it. It's reasonable, it will work quickly enough, but there are better systems on the market. You do have a physical button for your hazard light switch, and then you've got a range of physical buttons on this very premium steering wheel, which has the KGM script in the center of it instead of their badge. I've got a large favorites button on the left hand side, and then a massive button to turn on and off the auto hold function on the right hand side. There are shift paddles behind it, and then on the right hand side I've got controls for my fully adaptive cruise control system with proper self steer. So as long as you're holding this, it will keep you centered in your lane. And And then on the left hand side I've got all of my media controls and the button for my heated steering wheel. As mentioned before, climate controls are all in the central screen here, including the front windscreen and rear screen demist, which is slightly irritating, but you've got fully automatic climate control, 2 zones, and all of your heated seat controls as well. You can also open the boot from a button on the screen instead of a physical button, because there's essentially nothing down here in this panel. Your electric wing mirror controls and all 4 electric window controls are on the driver's door, and below them you've got quite large door bins, so you can get a good sized bottle of water down here, as well as these cup holders in the centre. It's a pretty practical, pretty stylish and pretty premium looking cabin. So I'll put on my red seat belt and let's go for a drive. The Actyon has a 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, which is mated to solely the front wheels through a 6-speed conventional auto transmission. The engine produces at its peak just over 160 PS and 280 Newton meters of torque, which does match it pretty closely with some of its rivals in the form of something like the Kia Sportage in its petrol-only guise. The thing that's missing in the Actyon is any form of hybridization or electrification of the powertrain. This is a petrol-only model, and you don't even get a choice when it comes to trim levels. This is the K50, and this is all you can buy in the UK market. However, the K50 is literally fully loaded. What KGM have done is literally ticked every single option you can get. So you've got full adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, blind spot warning, rear collision assist, and a great interior. When it comes to how the car drives, the first thing that you will notice is just how quiet it is in this cabin. You get very little road noise thanks to fancy Michelin sound deadening tyres, and then you've got acoustic glass in the front, as well as a lot of focus on reducing the amount of noise that's transmitted through to the cabin, whether that's road or wind noise. It is eerily quiet in here. The only thing that does cut through occasionally is if you put your foot down, the engine. Under harsh acceleration, it does make a little bit of noise, but under normal driving circumstances, it's a very quiet, distant rumble. The car is pretty well composed, however, the suspension is quite firm. Now, this does mean that it handles relatively well. There's a little bit of lean in corners, but it does catch it quite nicely. However, the firmness does mean that over poor road surfaces and undulations in the road, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. The gearbox is reasonable at putting the power through, and it shifts very smoothly. The power delivery is pretty good, however, with it only having 160-ish horsepower, the 0 to 62 time is over 10 seconds because the car is quite large. All control inputs feel pretty good, with the sole exception of the brake, and that's only because it doesn't quite bite as much as I was expecting it to. It encourages you to drive in a more leisurely fashion, and to be honest, I can get behind that. This car is very easy to waft about in. The steering is nice and light, but has a little bit of communication, so what that means is that, yep, you can kind of tell where the wheels are pointing, which is good. It holds itself on the road very well, and it's pretty easy to place because you've got quite a boxy design at the front with prominent angles on the bonnet, meaning you can kind of tell where the front of the car is. Rear visibility is pretty good through this mirror, but you will be using your door mirrors and blind spot monitoring system when you're on a motorway, because that large C-pillar does mean you've got a pretty big blind spot back there. The other good thing you get with this model is you get a full 3D 360-degree camera system. That makes parking it pretty easy. On the whole, I really quite like this car. It drives in a very inoffensive way. There's nothing stand out about it, but equally there's nothing particularly negative. The only slight downside you get is with it not having a hybrid system, the 1.5 turbo petrol can be described as a little bit thirsty. Official economy figures peg it just above 30 miles per gallon in the real world, and yeah, today we've been kind of averaging 29-ish, so not too dissimilar from the claimed figures. What is really good though with the Actyon is its starting price, because this comes to the market at just $36,995 on the road, and that means that if you spec an equivalent Kia Sportage up, you're saving about £2,300. Residual values are predicted to be relatively strong, so it shouldn't cost you too much to finance either. The only thing you may have to be wary of is those running costs. Safe to say, I quite like this car. So, have KGM got a potential blockbuster hit on their hands with the Actyon? I think they might. I really like how this car looks. It's incredibly practical and surprisingly luxurious inside. The driving experience is completely fine, but for somebody who's looking for something that's incredibly stylish and makes a bit of a statement, the Actyon is a pretty easy recommendation. It's great to see something that looks this good and has this much presence on the road coming from KGM as they rebrand and revitalise their image. That is everything for today's video, so thank you so much for watching. There are a few different ways you can support the channel. The first of which is by liking, commenting and subscribing to the Buckle Up YouTube channel if you've not done so already. Secondly, all of our social medias are linked in the video description. Please do go and follow us in one or all of those places. And thirdly, you can buy some merchandise that says Buckle Up or has our logo on it in our spread shop, also linked in the video description. I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.